Hello. Sorry for the late reply with an episode. Life has been hectic, and I have finally got caught up with everything I needed to be done. This one video will be a 3-episode video with our late Halloween special. So sit back and relax and enjoy the creepy stories of the night. Once upon a time, in a remote fog-shrouded town, there was an old prison called Blackthorn Penitentiary. Abandoned for decades, it was rumored to be haunted by the spirits of those who had suffered and died within its cold, iron walls. Legend had it that during its operation, strange things began to happen. Disembodied whispers echoing through the corridors, shadows moving where no one was, and ghostly figures seen lurking in the darkness. One stormy night, a group of daring teenagers decided to explore the abandoned prison, eager for a thrill. As they stepped inside, the air grew icy and their flashlights flickered. The heavy metal doors groaned shut behind them, sealing them inside. They heard faint crying and muffled screams coming from the depths of the prison. Suddenly, a ghostly guard materialized, his eyes hollow, wielding a rusted key. Panic set in as the spirits of prisoners past began to manifest, chains rattling, ghostly prisoners reaching out with icy hands. The teenagers tried to escape, but the prison seemed to warp and twist, corridors stretching endlessly, doors appearing and disappearing. One girl was pulled into a shadowy cell, her screams echoing as she vanished. The rest ran in terror, but the spirits haunted their every step, whispering commands to stay forever. When dawn finally broke, the prison was silent, but no one who entered that night ever left unchanged, or at all. Some say the spirits still linger, waiting for the next curious souls to venture into Blackthorn Penitentiary, where the haunted walls hold the memories and the nightmares of the past. The night of the silent sky. In the quiet, unassuming town of Ravenbrook, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The townsfolk knew each other by name, and nothing much ever disturbed the peace until the night the sky tore open. It was a cold autumn evening when the sky suddenly lit up with an unnatural glow. People looked up from their porches, puzzled by the brilliant streaks of green and purple tearing across the darkened sky. Then, a thunderous crash shattered the silence, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The next morning, the townsfolk gathered around the wreckage of what appeared to be a massive metallic craft, strewn across the outskirts of town. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Smooth, shimmering surfaces that reflected the pale light of dawn, and strange symbols etched along its sides. Curiosity turned to fear as strange figures emerged from the wreckage. Tall, slender beings with elongated limbs, luminous eyes that glowed faintly in the dawn, and skin that shimmered like the metal of their craft. They moved silently, almost hypnotically, as if they knew the town was watching but didn't care. At first, the locals tried to communicate, but the creatures responded with unsettling silence. Soon, the aliens began to move through the town. Their presence felt like a cold wind that seeped into every corner of people's homes. It wasn't long before the true horror unfolded. The aliens possessed the ability to enter people's minds, whispering dark thoughts, planting fears and doubts that gnawed at the fabric of the community. Those affected became mere puppets, zombies with vacant eyes, obeying the aliens' commands. The town's leader, Mayor Harold Green, tried to rally the townspeople, but even he was not immune. His mind was invaded, and he became an unwilling agent of the aliens, spreading fear and chaos. As days passed, Ravenbrook transformed. The peaceful town was now a shadow of itself, streets deserted except for the alien patrols, homes abandoned, and the few remaining residents hiding in basements, clutching their loved ones and praying for salvation. But salvation seemed impossible. The aliens had a sinister plan. They aimed to take over the entire country, using Ravenbrook as their foothold. Their craft emitted a strange aura that drained the life from the land, turning fertile fields into barren wastelands and polluting the very air. In the dead of night, a small group of survivors, teenagers Lily and Marcus, an old farmer named Joe, and a doctor named Sarah, huddled together, plotting their escape. They knew they had to destroy the alien ship, or find a way to break its hold on the town. With makeshift weapons and stolen supplies, they snuck past patrols, reaching the wreckage. Inside, they discovered the true horror. The ship was a living hive, filled with millions of tiny insect-like creatures that burrowed into the ground and spread like a plague. Lily, trembling but determined, managed to ignite a fire, causing chaos among the aliens. The ship started to crack and explode, sending a shockwave that shook the entire town. In the end, Ravenbrook was saved, barely. The remaining aliens retreated into the wreckage, vowing to return. The town was scarred forever, haunted by the memories of that night, and wary of the silent, glowing eyes that might still be watching from the shadows of the woods. And so, Ravenbrook remained a quiet reminder. Sometimes, the greatest horrors come from the stars, and the night sky can hide things far more terrifying than any earthly nightmare. The dark secrets of Ravensbrook. Keep once, in a remote valley shrouded in perpetual mist, stood Ravensbrook Keep, an ancient fortress that had weathered centuries of war, betrayal, and death. Its towering stone walls and twisted battlements seemed to whisper secrets to those brave enough to listen. But beneath its formidable exterior lay a history far darker than anyone dared imagine. Legend has it that Ravensbrook Keep was built on the site of an ancient burial ground, a place where the land itself was cursed. The original builders, seeking to harness the power of the spirits buried beneath, performed forbidden rituals that awakened forces better left undisturbed. From that day, strange happenings plagued the keep's history: disappearances, madness, and ghostly apparitions. The most infamous period in Ravensbrook's history was during the reign of Lord Aldrich Ravensbrook, a ruthless lord obsessed with immortality. In his relentless pursuit, he ordered his most trusted alchemists and sorcerers to uncover the secrets of eternal life. They delved into dark arts, summoning entities from other realms, sacrificing captives from nearby villages, and performing grisly experiments within hidden chambers beneath the keep. One stormy night, as lightning cracked across the sky, a terrible ritual went awry. The spirits Aldrich sought to control turned against him, unleashing a malevolent force that consumed the entire keep in chaos. The walls echoed with screams as shadows clawed their way out of the darkness, twisting and writhing like living nightmares. Many souls were trapped that night, their spirits cursed to wander the halls forever. After that catastrophe, the keep was abandoned for decades, but it was never truly empty. Tales of ghostly figures wandering its halls, whispers in the darkness, and unseen hands dragging victims into the shadows persisted. Some said the spirits of those sacrificed still lurked, seeking revenge on the living. In the 19th century, the keep was briefly inhabited by explorers and treasure hunters, lured by stories of hidden riches. They found only despair, rooms filled with mutilated remains, strange symbols carved into the walls, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Most never left, their fate sealed by the dark presence lurking within. The most horrifying legend involves the Dark Warden, a shadowy entity said to be the embodiment of Ravensbrück Keep's cursed soul. It appears as a tall, cloaked figure with glowing red eyes, guarding the secrets of the ancient rituals. Those who encounter the Warden are said to be driven mad or possessed, their minds consumed by the darkness. Today, Ravensbrück Keep stands as a crumbling monument to a forgotten evil. Travelers who dare venture near report hearing whispers carried by the wind, seeing fleeting shadows, or feeling an icy grip on their hearts. Some say that on moonless nights, the Warden walks the grounds, searching for new souls to add to its collection. And so, the dark history of Ravensbrück Keep remains alive, a chilling reminder of mankind's hubris and the terrible forces that lie beyond the veil of the known world. Beware if you ever find yourself near its gates, lest you become another ghost haunting its cursed halls. The Tale of the Three Little Pigs and the Shadow of the Woods. Once upon a time, in a small forgotten village nestled at the edge of an ancient twisted forest, there lived three little pigs. They were siblings, Percy the cleverest, Peter the strongest, and Polly the kindest. Each of them decided to build their own house to escape the lurking dangers of the woods. Percy, the cleverest, built his house of straw, thinking it would be quick to finish and easy to escape if needed. Peter, the strong one, built his house of sticks, sturdy enough to withstand the cold wind. Polly, the gentle sister, took her time and built her house of bricks, believing it would keep out any evil that lurked beyond. One dark night, as the wind howled through the trees, a sinister shadow crept into the woods. A creature born from nightmares, a dark figure with glowing red eyes and a hunger for fear. It was the Wolf of Shadows, a predator that fed on the terror of its victims. First, the wolf approached Percy's house of straw. With a huff and a puff that seemed to echo through the night, it blew the house down effortlessly. Percy ran as fast as he could, but the wolf was already on his tail. Percy reached Peter's house of sticks, calling out for safety. The wolf followed quickly, and with a mighty growl, shattered the stick house. Percy and Peter scrambled inside Polly's sturdy brick house, their hearts pounding with terror. But the wolf was not so easily defeated. It circled the brick house, whispering dark promises through the cracks, trying to lure the pigs outside. It knew that once they stepped into the woods, they would never return. As the night deepened, the wolf's true form revealed itself, a twisted, shadowy figure with claws like blades and a mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. It clawed at the brick walls, trying to break in, but Polly's house was too strong. Desperate, the wolf's eyes glowed brighter, and it began to whisper curses, secrets from the dark woods, promises of power, and threats of eternal darkness. The pigs huddled together, trembling, knowing that the creature was patient and relentless. Suddenly, the shadows around the house thickened. The wolf's form wavered and twisted into a monstrous visage, revealing it was not just a beast, but a creature born from the nightmares of those who dared to venture into the woods and never returned. The villagers say that on nights when the wind is just right, you can still hear the faint screams of the pigs echoing through the trees and see the flicker of red eyes watching from the shadows. The wolf of shadows still lurks beyond the forest, waiting for its next prey, feeding on fear and despair. And so, the tale of the 3 little pigs became a warning. Never underestimate the darkness that lurks at the edge of the woods, for some shadows are never truly gone. The Shadow of Ravensbrook, a witch trial tale. In the small village of Ravensbrook, nestled deep within a dense forest in 17th century England, fear and superstition gripped the hearts of its inhabitants. The village had long been a place where old legends lingered, and the line between reality and myth blurred under the weight of suspicion. It all began when strange occurrences plagued the village. Cattle found dead with strange symbols carved into their hides, crops wilting overnight, and whispers of ghostly figures seen at twilight. The villagers, already tense from war and hardship, grew increasingly anxious, believing that malevolent forces had taken root among them. One cold autumn evening, a young woman named Eliza was accused of witchcraft. She was a healer and midwife, known for her kindness and knowledge of herbs, but her solitary nature and unusual practices drew suspicion. Rumors spread that she had cursed a family's livestock after a dispute, and soon accusations turned into a mob's fury. The village elders, desperate to maintain order, summoned a local magistrate, Sir Reginald Hawthorne, a stern man known for his strict adherence to law and order. He declared that an investigation must be carried out, and so a makeshift court was convened in the village square. Eliza was brought forward, her hands trembling. The charges against her ranged from causing illness with her potions to summoning dark spirits. The villagers, driven by fear and superstition, testified about seeing her commune with shadows and her alleged involvement in the misfortunes befalling their families. Despite her protests of innocence, the evidence was flimsy. An old broomstick found near her hut, a strange symbol carved into a tree, and her association with a local hermit who was rumoured to be a witch hunter. The court, swayed by the hysteria, found her guilty. Eliza was sentenced to be burned at the stake. As the pyre was lit, her cries echoed through the village, a haunting reminder of the fear that had overtaken reason. Yet, in her final moments, she cursed the villagers for their blindness and pleaded for forgiveness. News of her death spread beyond Ravensbrook, stirring debates and fears. Some believed justice had been served, while others whispered that dark forces still lurked, and that the true evil was the ignorance and hysteria that had condemned an innocent woman. Years later, Ravensbrook's forest remained thick and silent, and the stories of the witch trials became a cautionary tale, reminding generations of the destructive power of fear and the importance of reason. The Legend of the Bunnyman Killer, a long night tale. In the quiet, shadowed outskirts of Fairfax County, Virginia, there's a legend that has haunted the local woods for decades. It's the story of the Bunnyman Killer, a figure cloaked in darkness with a rabbit mask hiding a twisted, malevolent face. The tale begins long ago, but the fear persists even now, whispering through the trees on moonless nights. The beginning. Decades ago, in the early 1900s, there was a man named Joseph Campbell, a disturbed individual with a fascination for rabbits. Some say he was a scientist experimenting with animal behavior. Others whisper he was a man driven mad by grief. Whatever the reason, Joseph's obsession with rabbits took a dark turn. He believed that rabbits were symbols of innocence, purity, and vulnerability, things he wanted to erase from the world. One stormy night, Joseph snapped. He dressed in a white rabbit costume, complete with floppy ears and a grotesque, painted-on smile. His mind twisted, and he began stalking the outskirts of the town, targeting those he saw as weak or helpless. His preferred method was brutal, and he would leave behind a trail of blood and mangled bodies. The legend of the Bunnyman. As the killings grew more frequent, the town grew fearful. Rumors spread about a bunnyman lurking in the woods, a creature that wore a rabbit mask and wielded a heavy axe. Some say Joseph's obsession had turned him into this monstrous creature, a predator hiding behind the guise of innocence. One fateful night, the townspeople caught wind of Joseph's latest spree. They tracked him deep into the woods, where they found a clearing bathed in moonlight. There they saw him standing silently, dressed in his rabbit costume, eyes wild and unhinged. They tried to capture him, but Joseph fought back fiercely, swinging his axe wildly. He vanished into the darkness, and in the chaos, he was shot and presumed dead. But the legend didn't end there. The police searched the woods for his body, but never found it. Some say he survived, hiding among the trees, waiting for the next victim. Others believe his spirit still haunts the area, a vengeful ghost in a rabbit mask. The modern nightmares, over the years, people have reported strange sightings near the old woods. Shadows darting between trees, the faint sound of footsteps following them, or a distant, unsettling giggle, like a child's laugh, but twisted and hollow. Some say they've seen a figure in a white rabbit costume lurking just beyond their vision, watching silently. One night, a group of teenagers dared each other to explore the woods. As they ventured deeper, they felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Suddenly, a figure appeared, a tall, thin man in a rabbit mask, holding an axe. He didn't speak, only stared with hollow eyes. Panic set in, and they ran, but one of them tripped and fell. When they looked back, the figure was gone, but the bloodstains on the ground told a story of terror. The tale continues. The legend of the Bunnyman Killer persists to this day. Some say he is a spirit, cursed to haunt the woods forever, while others believe he is a real person, hiding in the shadows, waiting for his next victim. The local authorities warn travelers to stay away from the old Fairfax woods after dark, for fear of encountering the man in the rabbit costume. And on quiet nights, when the wind is just right, you can still hear the faint giggle echoing through the trees. An eerie reminder that the bunnyman is never truly gone, just waiting in the darkness for the next unlucky soul to cross his path. The Whispering Shadows. It started on a cold, foggy night when Emily decided to take a shortcut home through the old woods just outside town. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches like grasping claws reaching for the moon. She had always been curious about the place, but no one ever dared to go deep into the forest after sunset. As she stepped beneath the canopy, a strange silence enveloped her. No birds, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive stillness. The deeper she went, the more she felt a prickling at the back of her neck, as if invisible eyes were watching her every move. Suddenly, she heard faint whispers carried on the wind. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then the whispers grew louder, clearer. They seemed to be calling her name, softly, then urgently. She froze, heart pounding, as shadowy figures began to flicker just beyond her sight. Dark silhouettes, with glowing eyes that vanished whenever she looked directly at them. Panicked, Emily turned to run, but the path ahead twisted and disappeared into an even darker part of the woods. As she stumbled forward, the whispers turned into screams, ghastly, distorted voices pleading and crying for help. Shadows swirled around her, forming twisted shapes that clawed at her mind. She remembered her phone, but it was dead. No signal, no way to call for help. Her breath quickened as the shadows closed in, their whispers becoming a deafening chorus. Desperately, she tried to backtrack, but the forest seemed to shift, trapping her in a never-ending maze. Then she saw it. An ancient, dilapidated cabin covered in thick vines. Driven by a mix of fear and hope, she rushed inside. The air was thick with dust and decay, and in the corner she saw a mirror, cracked and tarnished. As she looked into it, her reflection was replaced by a hollow-eyed figure with a sinister smile. The shadows had followed her into the cabin. Suddenly, she heard a voice, soft, cold, and whispering right into her ear. "You can never leave." The shadows seeped into her skin, and everything went black. Emily's body was found days later at the edge of the woods, but her eyes were vacant, and her expression was one of terror. No one knew what truly happened that night, but sometimes, on foggy nights, faint whispers can still be heard from the forest, calling out to the next curious soul to wander too deep. A Thanksgiving Shadow. It was a cold, crisp Thanksgiving evening in the small town of Maplewood. The Johnson family had gathered at the grand old estate that had been in the family for generations. The air was filled with the aroma of roasted turkey, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie. Laughter echoed through the halls as relatives caught up, swapping stories and reminiscing about old times. Among the guests was Detective Sarah Blake, a family friend and a seasoned investigator who had come to enjoy the holiday despite the usual chaos. She was seated near the fireplace sipping her wine when the light suddenly flickered and went out. A collective gasp filled the room. The power had gone out, and a moment later, a scream pierced through the darkness. A flashlight beam revealed the lifeless body of Henry Johnson, the family patriarch, sprawled on the floor behind the grand staircase. A knife was embedded deep in his chest. The room fell into stunned silence. The family was in shock, but Sarah quickly took charge. She began to investigate, realizing that everyone in the house was a suspect. Henry had many secrets, debts, rivals, and a recent argument with his brother over the family inheritance. As she questioned each family member, dark truths emerged. His wife, Eleanor, had recently discovered Henry's infidelity. Their son, Mark, was caught stealing money from his father. The maid, Mrs. Carter, had been fired just days earlier after an argument. And there was Henry's business partner, who stood to gain a fortune if Henry died. The storm outside prevented anyone from leaving, trapping them all together in the mansion. Sarah meticulously examined the scene and uncovered a hidden note in Henry's pocket, revealing a threat he had received days before. She also found a broken pocket watch near the body, suggesting a struggle. As the night wore on, secrets unraveled and motives became clearer. Finally, Sarah pieced everything together. The killer was someone least suspected, Eleanor, Henry's wife. Driven by years of betrayal and financial desperation, she had lured Henry into a trap, stabbing him during the blackout. When confronted, Eleanor broke down and confessed. Her plan had been to make it look like an accident, but her guilt had overwhelmed her. The police arrived in the early hours, and she was taken into custody. Thanksgiving in Maplewood would never be the same. The joyful memories of that holiday were forever tainted by the shadow of murder, a stark reminder that darkness can lurk behind even the warmest celebrations. The Whispering Pines. In the small town of Millbrook, nestled deep within the dense forests of Maine, there was a place nobody dared go after sunset. It was called Whispering Pines, an abandoned campground that had been shut down for decades after a series of strange disappearances and inexplicable events. Eddie Marlowe, a skeptical journalist from Portland, arrived in Millbrook one cold autumn afternoon, determined to uncover the truth behind the legends surrounding Whispering Pines. His curiosity had been piqued by local stories of ghostly whispers carried on the wind, disembodied voices calling out in the dead of night, and villagers who warned him to stay away. Eddie set up his camp near the edge of the forest, equipped with a flashlight, a notebook, and a camera. As dusk fell, the woods seemed to awaken, shadows stretching and twisting like living things. He chuckled at himself for feeling nervous, attributing it to overactive imagination. But then he heard it, not a sound, but a whisper, faint and indistinct, like someone softly calling his name. He froze, listening. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, swirling through the trees like a strange melody. Eddie decided to investigate. He followed the whispers deeper into the forest, where the trees grew closer together, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. The air grew cold and heavy, and a strange sense of dread settled over him. Suddenly, he stumbled onto an old, dilapidated sign that read "Campground Closed." Beyond it, he saw the remnants of what once must have been a lively campsite: fire pits, broken tents, and scattered debris. But what caught his attention was a small, weathered wooden shack at the center, its door slightly ajar. As he approached, the whispers turned into voices, many voices, overlapping, crying out in despair, pleading for help, warning him to leave. Eddie's heart pounded. He pushed open the door and peered inside. The shack was empty except for a single dusty mirror hanging on the wall. As he looked into it, his reflection flickered and twisted, revealing a horrifying image behind him. A shadowy figure with hollow eyes staring directly at him. Eddie spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the cold, dark woods. He felt a hand on his shoulder. No, a cold breeze. He hurried back to his camp, the whispers still echoing in his mind. That night, sleep was impossible. The whispers haunted his dreams, pulling him into a nightmare where he was lost in an endless forest. The trees whispering secrets only he could hear. He saw the faces of those who had vanished, eyes staring, mouths open in silent screams. The next morning, Eddie decided to leave. He packed his belongings, but as he stepped into his car, he saw it, a small, faded note pinned to his windshield with a rusty nail. It read, "Stay with us. You belong here." His blood ran cold. As he looked back toward the woods, he saw a shadow move behind the trees. It was then he realized the forest was alive, and it wanted him to stay. Eddie drove away hurriedly, but the whispers followed him all the way back to Portland. He tried to tell his story, but no one believed him. The article he wrote was dismissed as paranoia. Years later, Eddie would disappear from his apartment without a trace. His notebooks and recordings were found weeks later, filled with frantic scribbles and disturbing whispers. The last entry read, "They're waiting for me in the pines. They won't let me go." And somewhere, in the depths of the Maine woods, the whispers continue, calling out to the next visitor who dares to listen. The Pact of Shadows. In a small, forgotten town, a group of teenagers, desperate and lost, stumbled upon an ancient legend whispered in burned-out classrooms and abandoned houses. It was said that long ago, a demon named Malakar roamed the shadows, tempting souls with promises of power and eternal life. The legend warned that those who made a pact with Malakar would be forever bound, their souls serving as vessels for his dark army. One stormy night, driven by a mix of curiosity and despair, 4 teenagers, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Tyler, decided to test the legend. They gathered in the abandoned cemetery, their breaths visible in the cold air, and recited the forbidden incantation they had found scrawled in an old dusty book. As they finished, the ground trembled, and a black fog seeped from the earth, swirling around them. An unearthly voice whispered their names, offering them immortality in exchange for their souls. Terrified but desperate for escape from their pain, they agreed, sealing a pact with Malakar. But the demon's promise was a lie. Instead of salvation, they were cursed. Their bodies became hollow shells, their eyes black pits of darkness. Night after night, Malakar's influence grew stronger, feeding on their suffering, turning their screams into whispers that echoed through the town. One by one, they vanished. Emma was found dead in her room, a sinister smile frozen on her face. Jake disappeared into the shadows, his body never found. Lily's body was discovered in the woods, eyes staring blankly at the moon. Tyler was the last, his voice forever silenced in a scream that only the darkness could hear. Now, the legend warns, if you find the ancient book and hear the whisper of the shadows, do not listen, for some pacts are better left unbroken, and some darkness never truly fades. The Whispering Portrait. In a small, forgotten town, there was an old antique shop run by a quiet, unassuming man. Among his many treasures, there was a peculiar portrait of a woman with piercing eyes that seemed to follow you wherever you went. Legend had it that the portrait was cursed, but no one paid much attention, until a young woman named Clara moved into the town. Clara was fascinated by the portrait and bought it, eager to hang it in her home. That night, strange things began to happen. She'd hear faint whispers echoing through her house, indecipherable but persistent. Shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, and her reflection in the mirror sometimes showed the woman from the portrait, smiling eerily. As days passed, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Clara felt an overwhelming presence lurking just beyond her sight, a malevolent consciousness seeping into her life. The portrait's eyes seemed to glow in the dark, and she began to see the woman's face in her dreams, smiling, but with a sinister twist. One evening, Clara found her reflection no longer in control. The woman in the portrait had taken her place, her eyes now burning with malice. The whispers turned into screams. The next morning, the house was silent. Clara was gone. All that remained was the portrait, now hanging in the shop again, waiting for the next curious soul to bring it home, and for the insidious presence to find a new vessel. The Legend of Old Man Harrow. In a small, forgotten village nestled deep within a dark forest, there was a legend whispered among the villagers, a story of a man whose very name sent shivers down their spines. Old Man Harrow. Many years ago, Harrow was once a respected healer, known for his knowledge of herbs and medicines. But as time passed, a strange darkness twisted his soul. His eyes, once kind and gentle, became cold and piercing, glinting with a sinister hunger. No one knew exactly what dark secrets he kept, but they knew better than to cross him. Old Man Harrow lived alone in a decrepit cabin on the outskirts of the village, surrounded by twisted trees and tangled vines. Villagers avoided his home, especially after sunset, for strange things were said to happen there. Children dared each other to peek through his windows, but they would never stay long, too afraid of what they might see. One winter night, a young girl named Eliza disappeared. She was known to be brave, often wandering near Harrow's cabin, but that night she never returned. The villagers searched everywhere, but there was no trace of her. Only a faint, foul smell drifting from the woods and the faint sound of whispers carried on the wind. Over the years, more disappearances followed. People who dared to venture too close to Harrow's land. The villagers grew terrified and superstitious. They believed Harrow had made a pact with dark forces, trading his soul for eternal life and forbidden power. One stormy evening, a brave young man named Thomas decided to confront Harrow. Armed with a lantern and a resolve to end the evil, he crept to the old man's cabin. As he approached, the air grew icy cold, and the trees seemed to whisper warnings. He pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The inside was dark and filled with strange symbols scrawled on the walls, and jars filled with unidentifiable substances lined the shelves. In the center of the room, Harrow sat hunched over a strange glowing object, perhaps a cursed relic or a portal to hell itself. Harrow's eyes flicked to Thomas, a cruel smile curling his lips. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. "But since you are, I'll show you what lies beyond the veil." Suddenly, the room seemed to warp and twist. Shadows danced on the walls, and ghostly whispers filled the air. Harrow started chanting in a language lost to time, and the glowing object pulsed brighter. Thomas tried to back away, but the shadows lunged at him, clawing and dragging him into the darkness. No one ever saw Thomas again, but on cold winter nights, villagers claim they hear his screams carried on the wind, mingled with Harrow's sinister laughter. And what of Harrow? Well, legend says he continues his dark work still, hidden in the shadows of the forest, waiting for the next foolish soul to stumble into his trap. His eyes, now said to be even more terrible, can see into your mind and your fears. They say he feeds on your terror, growing stronger with each victim. So beware the old man in the woods. For if you hear his cackling laughter or see his crooked silhouette against the moonlight, it might be already too late. You might just become the next chapter in the terrible story of Old Man Harrow. Hello, welcome to our Halloween special. We're glad to have you here tonight, and I hope you had a spooky Halloween with candy and scary movies. I hope you're ready for the stories we got for you today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy our scary stories tonight. The Legend of Hollowbrook Manor. Once upon a time, in a small fog-shrouded town, there was an old mansion called Hollowbrook Manor. The house had stood abandoned for over a century, its windows shattered, walls covered in ivy, and its reputation haunted by whispers of ghostly apparitions and dark secrets. Every Halloween night, villagers would avoid the place, warning each other never to go near it after sunset. But one Halloween, a group of daring teenagers, Lila, Mark, Sarah, and Jake, decided to explore the manor, convinced it was just a myth, a Halloween prank, or perhaps a spooky story to scare little children. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the town, they approached the creaking iron gate. It groaned loudly as they pushed it open, and a chill ran down their spines. The air grew thick with the smell of decay and something else, something metallic. Inside, the mansion was colder than they expected. Their flashlights flickered as they moved through the grand hallway. where the once lavish wallpaper was peeling, revealing dark, damp walls beneath. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors stared down at them, their eyes seeming to follow every move. Suddenly, they heard a faint whispering, indistinct at first, then clearer. "Get out." It echoed through the halls. They froze, but their curiosity pushed them further in. They found themselves in a grand ballroom, where a broken chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling. As they stepped inside, the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. Out of the corner of their eyes, they saw a shadow dart past, a fleeting figure with glowing eyes. Panicked but determined, they decided to ascend the staircase to the second floor. The stairs groaned loudly, and as they reached the top, the air grew colder still. Doors lined the corridor, each slightly ajar. One door at the end was closed tight, but as they approached, it slammed open on its own. Inside was a nursery, filled with dusty toys and a broken crib. Sitting in the corner was a small, ghostly figure, a child with hollow eyes and a chilling smile. Before anyone could react, the child's voice echoed, "You shouldn't be here." Terrified, they tried to leave, but the house seemed to twist and warp around them. The hallways stretched endlessly, the doors multiplied, and ghostly figures appeared, former residents of Hollowbrook, their faces twisted in pain and rage. Suddenly, the mansion shook violently, as if alive. Walls cracked, and the air filled with screams and wails. The ghostly child floated towards them, whispering, "Stay forever." The teens ran, stumbling through the maze of corridors until they burst out into the night, gasping for breath. The mansion loomed behind them, silent once again, but the horrifying whispers echoed in their minds. From that night on, none of them spoke of what they saw inside Hollowbrook Manor. But every Halloween, they could feel the ominous presence lurking in the shadows, reminding them that some secrets are better left buried, and some haunted houses are best left alone. The Silent Watcher. In the small, forgotten town of Ravensbrook, there was an old, abandoned asylum at the edge of the woods. Once a place of healing, it had long since fallen into disrepair, shrouded in darkness and ghost stories. Locals avoided it, whispering tales of strange noises and disappearances. But for a group of teenagers seeking thrill and adventure, it was the perfect place for a night of daring exploration. Their names were Sarah, Mark, Lisa, and Jake. Each had heard the stories but dismissed them as superstitions. They arrived just after sunset, flashlights in hand, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. The asylum's heavy iron gates creaked open as they pushed them, revealing a dark corridor that stretched into the shadows. The air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The walls were covered in peeling paint, graffiti, and strange symbols. As they wandered through the halls, their footsteps echoed loudly, bouncing off the broken tiles. Suddenly, Sarah's flashlight flickered, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. "Probably just old wiring," she whispered, trying to sound brave. They moved deeper into the building, passing empty cells, abandoned medical equipment, and broken furniture. The silence was oppressive, broken only by their nervous chatter and the occasional distant sound that could have been the wind or something else entirely. Then they heard it. a faint, rhythmic humming coming from the basement. Probably just the wind, Mark suggested, but his voice betrayed his unease. They decided to investigate, descending the stairs cautiously. The basement was darker, colder, and more oppressive. Shadows danced on the walls. The humming grew louder, more hypnotic. As they reached the bottom, they saw a figure standing in the corner, cloaked in tattered white robes. Its face was obscured, but they could feel its eyes, cold, unblinking, fixed on them. "Who's there?" Lisa called out, voice trembling. The figure slowly turned, revealing a face that was blank and devoid of emotion. Its mouth opened, but no sound came out. Only a whispering, like the wind through broken windows. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward with unnatural speed. Screaming, they scattered, running back up the stairs. But the halls seemed to twist and shift, corridors stretching endlessly in every direction. One by one, the friends disappeared into the darkness, their screams echoing through the asylum. Sarah ran, heart pounding, until she found herself in a familiar corridor, the main hall of the asylum. But the walls were covered in fresh blood, and the figure was nowhere to be seen. She stumbled outside into the night, gasping for breath. But as she looked back at the asylum, she saw a tall, shadowy figure watching from the broken window. The figure from the basement, now standing silently, staring directly at her. She ran, but she knew she couldn't escape what lurked inside. Weeks later, the town's police found no trace of her friends, no sign of their bodies. The asylum remained untouched, silent, waiting. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind howled through Ravensbrook, people swore they saw the figure in white, watching from the shadows, waiting for the next visitor to enter its domain. Because in Ravensbrook, some darkness never dies. It just waits in silence. The haunting of Blackwood Manor. The old Blackwood Manor had been abandoned for decades, its once grand halls now cloaked in shadows and decay. Rumours swirled among the nearby town of Ravensbrook, stories of strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and a sinister presence that refused to let go. Most dismissed it as local legend, but a group of 4 friends, Emma, Ryan, Lily, and Marcus, were about to discover that some stories were terrifyingly real. Chapter 1. The Invitation. It was late October when Emma found the weathered, leather-bound journal tucked away in her grandmother's attic. The journal belonged to her great-great-grandmother, who had lived in Blackwood Manor long before it was abandoned. The entries detailed strange dreams, mysterious figures, and a recurring phrase, "The darkness dwells where the light fears to shine." Emma's curiosity was piqued, but she dismissed it as superstition until she read about a secret room hidden behind a false wall that contained a strange symbol etched into the floor. That night, Emma shared her discovery with Ryan, Lily, and Marcus. They decided to investigate the manor, eager for a thrill and perhaps to uncover the truth behind the ghost stories. Ignoring the warnings from the townsfolk, they packed their gear, brought flashlights, and set out under a moonless sky. Chapter 2. The Ascent into Darkness. The manor loomed as a hulking silhouette against the night sky. Its windows were boarded up, and vines snaked over the crumbling brickwork. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay. As they pushed open the heavy front door, it groaned loudly, revealing a dark, musty interior. Their flashlights flickered as they stepped inside. The house seemed alive, groaning and creaking with every movement. Shadows danced along the walls, and the air grew colder as they ventured further. Emma's voice trembled as she read aloud from her grandmother's journal, recounting her own encounters with the supernatural there. In the dim light, they found the grand staircase leading to the upper floors, and a faint outline of a door behind a false wall in the study. Lily, the bravest of the group, volunteered to find the secret room. With a crowbar, she pried open the hidden panel, revealing a small, dust-choked chamber. Chapter 3. The Secrets Unveiled. Inside the secret room, they discovered strange symbols etched into the floor and walls. An old, ornate box sat atop a pedestal, wrapped in cobwebs. Marcos reached out to open it, but as he did, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing their flashlights. Suddenly, the room was flooded with a sickly green glow. Shadows coalesced into twisted figures, their eyes hollow and staring. Emma screamed as one reached out, fingers like claws. The figures hissed in unison. "The darkness is here." Panicked, the group fled the room, but the house seemed to shift and twist around them, corridors elongating and doors disappearing. They realized they weren't alone. Something malevolent was awakened by their intrusion. Chapter 4. The House's Wrath. Back in the main hall, the house unleashed its fury. Furniture moved on its own, windows shattered, and disembodied voices echoed through the halls. The friends tried to escape, but the doors were sealed tight. The ghostly figures appeared again, now closer, more aggressive. Emma remembered a phrase from her grandmother's journal. To banish the darkness, one must confront the source. She recalled the symbol in the secret room, a circle with a cross through it, and understood that it was a ward, a barrier meant to contain the malevolent spirit. Desperate, they returned to the secret room, fighting through the spectral assault. Emma, trembling but determined, recited an incantation from the journal, her voice trembling as she traced the symbol on the floor. As she finished, the shadows writhed and shrieked, then vanished in a cloud of black smoke. The house fell eerily silent. The oppressive weight lifted, but the scars remained. The friends knew that the evil had been contained, for now. Epilogue. The aftermath. They fled Blackwood Manor at dawn, exhausted and traumatized. The house stood silent once more, but the townsfolk knew better than to forget. Emma kept her grandmother's journal, now filled with warnings and prayers. She knew that darkness was not gone forever. It merely slept, waiting for the next intruder. And sometimes, late at night, Emma swears she can still hear whispers, remnants of a house that refused to forget, and a darkness that still dwells where the light fears to shine. Once, in a quiet town nestled between dense forests and misty hills, life moved peacefully until the night everything changed. It began with strange whispers carried on the wind, whispers that seemed to come from the shadows themselves. People dismissed it as the wind playing tricks, but soon the whispers turned into guttural moans and shuffling footsteps. One stormy evening, as lightning lit up the sky, a group of villagers gathered in the town square. feeling an inexplicable dread. Suddenly, from the darkness emerged figures, pale, decayed, with hollow eyes that burned with an unnatural hunger. The dead had risen. The undead were relentless, climbing over walls, breaking through windows, their hands reaching out to drag the living into their nightmarish realm. The town's defenses crumbled as the undead swarmed, their groans echoing through the streets like a sinister symphony. Amidst the chaos, a young woman named Eliza remembered an old legend about an ancient curse that had awakened the dead. She and a handful of survivors sought refuge in the abandoned church on the hill, believing it to be their last sanctuary. Inside, they discovered ancient symbols and a cryptic journal hinting at a ritual to banish the undead. If only they could find the right relic and perform it before it was too late. As days turned into nights, the undead grew more numerous and aggressive. The air was thick with the stench of death, and every dawn brought the terrible realization that more of their loved ones had fallen or risen. Eliza and her companions fought desperately, risking everything to find salvation in the old legends. But some horrors are eternal. The curse had not only awakened the dead, but had also begun to spread beyond the town, threatening to turn the entire world into a wasteland of the undead. The last hope lay in a dangerous ritual, one that could either save humanity or doom it forever. In the end, as the undead closed in around them, Eliza realized that the true horror was not just the rise of the dead, but the darkness within human hearts, fear, betrayal, and the desperate longing for survival at any cost. And in that darkness, the undead thrived, waiting patiently for their next feast. The rise of the undead was only the beginning. The true nightmare had just begun. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. I really appreciate your support and time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, take care and stay awesome. See you in the next video.